Now after this we have functions. Okay, so we have functions also, so I'm going to write functions here. So I'm just going to say we have functions functions. So functions are what? Functions in JavaScript are blocks of reusable codes that can be defined, called and passed as arguments to other functions. So let's understand them with some examples. So first of all, we have a function. So for defining a function, we have the function keyword. Then we have the function name. Suppose my function name is greet. So I can simply say whenever someone calls this function, I would show something, I would do something. So I'm just returning hello. So if I just write greet, if I call this function greet, it would print hello. That's how it actually works. Okay, so this was first thing. Now one more important thing is you can provide some parameters also. So if I just provide the name parameter to this function, and suppose I print the value like this. Okay, so if I say your name is this. Okay, so whenever you provide this function some name, automatically you would print this. Okay, so you can see right now name is undefined because you haven't provided any name. But suppose if you provide HARSHAL some value, so you can see your name is this. Okay, your name is this. Similar to this, we have to provide some more operations, like for example we have some function add, and it actually takes two values, for example a and b. Okay, so a and b, it takes two values, and you can actually return the sum of a and b. So if I try to print this, so you are saying that right now I'm not console log, I'm not doing console log. Console log means print. Return means wherever you call that function, that variable would have the value of a plus b. For example, I'll just say let result. You're just saying that whatever this function returns would be stored inside this variable. That means a plus b, whatever is a plus b, you can see in this case a plus b is 30. So you would be storing 30 inside this. So now if I just try to print the value of a plus b, you can see now I'm actually getting 30. Okay, so that's also you can use the functions. And return means wherever you call this value, wherever you call this function, that variable would be having the return value. Okay, that's how it actually works, right? Now guys, after this we are going to understand one more important method, that is arrow functions. So arrow functions are very easy. You can see right now for defining arrow function, you can either define it with var let const, whatever you want. Now you want to say that your variable name is this, then you're just going to provide the values. Okay, you are going to provide the values. Okay, so then you whatever you want to do, you can just return it. This is known as an arrow function. This is a newer version of declaring function. It does the same job, but just a more easier way, you can say. And you can just print value like this, you can get the same output. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, and it's often recommended to use it nowadays instead of using normal functions, but we would be using both in some cases. Okay, so you can see that's a method for declaring arrow functions. Now we also have a shorthand for this. If you see it something like this, that means suppose you only have one line, so instead of giving some extra brackets, you can write it like this also. Okay, but in some cases you might have some extra lines. For example, you would just say, suppose we have one line named as let c equals a plus b, and then you can see we have more than one line, so you have to write it inside brackets. Okay, you have to write it inside brackets. So that's totally up to you, whatever you want to use. In some cases you would be using the shorthand, in some cases you would be using these brackets. Okay, so this actually makes more organized code. Okay, so these were the arrow functions. Now one more important thing, that is we can also provide default parameters. For example, you didn't provide any parameter. If I just say a equals 50, if you don't provide the value of a, what would happen? So you can see right now I didn't provide any value. I can just say that its value is suppose null. Okay, if its value is null, so you can see I'm not getting anything. But suppose you are providing undefined, so you can see undefined simply means that if you don't provide the value of first parameter, automatically this value would be taken. Automatically 50 plus extra thing is what, 20 would be taken. Okay, so default value is simply whatever default value comes. If the value remains undefined, then you would provide the default value. Okay, that's how it actually works. But if you provide null, null would be taken instead of this 50. Okay, so that's the difference, right? So that's how you can provide the default parameters. One more important thing is the rest parameters. Okay, so rest parameters are really easy to use, and you're just saying that we have a function which would actually give you sum of any amount of numbers. Okay, I would just say numbers, and inside this you are just providing some amount of parameters. Okay, so you don't know how many amount of parameters you're going to provide, but you have some n amount, and then you can just say, suppose you have the let sum equals 0, you would be starting your sum with 0, then you are just saying that whatever data you have would be treated as an array. Okay, so you would be just creating a for of loop for number of numbers, and you're just adding that each element to your sum variable, and at the end you're just returning the sum. That means if you are providing 5 numbers, you are returning the sum of those 5 numbers. Okay, so this input would be actually taken as what? It would be actually taken as our uh, array. Okay, so this is treated as an array, and then you would be performing something. Okay, so now suppose if you want to just perform some operation, for example, I would just say let res result equals, and I want to get the sum of first 10 numbers, so I can easily get this with the result. Okay, so you can see that's how you can actually use the rest parameters. They are really useful when you don't know what kind of parameters are you going to send, and you can send infinite parameters with this method. Okay, so this is also very useful in some cases. Right now guys, we have one more important type of functions named as recursive functions, and functions which actually call themselves again and again inside each other are actually known as recursive functions. They are often used for tasks that can be broken down into smaller similar tasks. For example, you want to get a factorial. Factorial is what? Again, you are just going to say that factorial is what? If I write factorial of 5. What is factorial of 5? So factorial 5 is actually 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. That means I'm just decrementing the size. You can see 5 is decremented by 1, then decremented by 1, then decremented by 1, then decremented by 1. So you can actually create this with a normal function also, like using a normal for loop, you can do the same task. But using recursive calls, it actually makes things very smaller and makes more like organized code. Okay, so I would just create a function, so factorial, and if I write it, suppose whatever factorial you want to find, I find it like this, and I would simply say return n into n minus 1. That means if I talk about factorial of 4, what is factorial of 4? So if I talk about factorial of 4, you can see it's 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. If I talk about factorial of 3, it's 3 into 2 into 1. If I talk about factorial of 2, it's 2 into 1. If I talk about factorial of 1, it's actually 1. So I'm just saying that for other values, just find the previous factorial. Okay, if I'm talking about factorial of 5, I'm just saying 5 into factorial of 4. Now to talk about factorial of 4, I'm just saying 4 into factorial of 3. That's how it actually works. But what about factorial of 1? So I'm just saying that if n became 1 or it somehow became less than 0, just return 1. Okay, so I'm just saying that if n is equal to 0 or n is equal to 1, then you are just returning 1. So in some case n might become 0 and accidentally it might become 0, but you are just stopping at 1. But still, if accidentally it became 0, you are just returning 1. That means you are just saying that factorial of 4 would be actually 4 into 3 into 2 into factorial of 1. That means it would return 1, then after this it would return factorial of 2, then it would return factorial of 3, then it would return factorial of 4, and at the end it would return factorial of 5 totally. Okay, so that's how actually recursive call works. And if I just want to get the value, I can get the value directly. It would give me 120. Okay, so that's how actually works. If I want to get the value of 4, you can see that's giving me value of 4, and if I multiply it by 5, it would again give me 120. So that's how actually factorial works. Okay guys, so after this we have one more important thing in JavaScript that is known as DOM manipulation. Okay, so let me just explain this, then we can end the video. So we have the name. Okay, let me just save this. So I'll just say functions loops conditions .html, and I will just save this code here, and the code actually became pretty long, so let me just erase everything. Now, what is DOM manipulation? So for example, we have some elements who have some IDs and some values. So you can see we have some elements in the HTML page which has some ID and value. You can see this has ID, my heading, my paragraph, and my button. Okay, so I'm just saying that if I want to manipulate the HTML of this page, okay, what I can actually do is I can simply say, first of all, target in JavaScript, let's say where heading, and I'm just saying document.getElement by ID, my heading. Okay, so if I print document, okay, let me just print a document. Okay, if I just print a document, let's see what we actually get. Okay, so console.log heading. So you would get what? So you would get a complete document. This is known as an object. Okay, this is known as an object. So by default your web page is an object. You can see you are getting everything, you are getting everything. But if I want to say that document dot get element by id, how are we getting the element? So if I talk about body, you can see I'm getting the body. Inside body, what do you have? So let's see what do we have inside the body. You can see we have a lot elements here, but we have some attributes here. You can see we have some attributes here, then we have some child nodes. So if I go to child nodes, can see I'm getting the child nodes. Okay, I'm getting all the tags which I have here, right? We have all the tags here. Okay, if I talk about the first h1 tag, you can see I'm getting everything of it. And if I scroll down, you can see I am actually getting the values of this. Okay, you can see inner html. So I want to target the inner html and I want to change this value. Okay, that's what I want. So I can simply say, if you want to target these kind of things, so you would just want to target the id of it, document dot get element by id, and then you need to provide the id of that. Okay, so you can see I'm providing the id. So now I have simply targeted that element, I'm getting that element. Now I would just say heading dot inner html. Okay, if I want to get the inner html, you would get the inner html. If I say heading dot inner html equals to something, okay, heading dot inner html equals to hey there. Okay, so now if I just want to print this, you can actually see that in your page also this changed. Okay, if I make this normal, you would see hello world, but I manipulated the html. This is actually known as DOM manipulation, and you will be using this lot in JavaScript. Okay, so document object model is a programming interface in web documents. It represents a page so that the programs can change the document structure, style, and content dynamically. Essentially, it provides a structured representation of the web page, allowing you to manipulate and interact with the page element using code. So the DOM is typically used in web development with languages like JavaScript to access and modify HTML and XML documents. So right now we understood how to actually manipulate things. Similarly, if you want to manipulate, suppose the paragraphs, what you can actually do is, where paragraph is this, now I would just say paragraph dot inner html is something else, so this is a new paragraph. Okay, so that's how you can modify things. You can also add something to this button. So I would just target this button, so I'll just say let button is this. Now when someone clicks on that button, then I want to make some changes. Okay, so for that what I can do is I can call an event. So I'll just say button dot add event listener, and when I click on this button, okay, so we have different events in JavaScript. You can learn more about this separately, but very easiest event is click event. So when I click on this event, I can actually call a function or create a function here itself. So you're just saying whenever I click on this button, then I want to call a function which does this job for me, you can create a separate function. Okay, you can just say, you can, instead of this, you can just create some separate function. Let me just name it as my func. Okay, I can call this function inside this. Okay, so you're just saying whenever someone clicks on this button, then only I'm going to make some changes. How you can actually do this? Okay, so right now you can see we have it like this. Okay, so when someone clicks on this, then only I'm going to call this function, right? So what you can actually do is, if I make this normal, okay, so now you can see it would work properly. You don't need to pass brackets here. You can see my function is here. If I click on this, you can see now I get hey there and this new paragraph. So that's what you can do. You can also change the color also. So you can simply say heading dot style dot color equals red. So you can actually change the color also. So if I click on this, you can change the color also. Okay, so you can learn more about this. You can search more about this on the internet, how to modify CSS using DOM. You would learn different methods later on. Okay, but that's a very basic overview of DOM. That's how you're going to use DOM to manipulate the HTML page. Okay, so if I reload this, you can see it like this. If I click on this, it would change the things. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you understood all the concepts of JavaScript which we learned today. In the next video, we are going to learn about arrays, and we're also going to learn about objects. We are also going to learn about asynchronous methods in JavaScript. So that's it for today. I will see you in the next one. Till then, have a good day. Bye bye.